Hey, it's Steve. Are you wondering if the hobby of model railroading might be a good hobby for you? Or are you just wondering why people enjoy the hobby in the first place? Or kind of wondering what's involved with it? Well, I'm going to try to answer some of those questions in this video. All right, so anyway, I was sitting here and trying to do some videos. I'm trying to do a weekly video, and things have not been going well with the last couple of videos I've been trying to produce. A lot of problems. I was trying to do a keep alive capacitor in an Atlas S2. That hasn't worked out well. Actually ended up breaking it. And so I have to have a video coming up soon on how to fix an Atlas S2 locomotive. But anyway, a couple other videos, I'm just kind of, things just aren't moving along well. And so I decided, well, maybe I'll just talk for now a little bit about the hobby of model railroading and why I enjoy it, even though it can be frustrating sometimes, and why it might be a good hobby for you, and really why people are into the hobby in the first place. And if you don't know a lot about it, you might just think it's about playing with trains or collecting trains, that kind of thing. And some people do really make it more of a collection, kind of hobby where you are collecting locomotives or rolling stock from different road names or, those kinds of things. And that really can be sort of an aspect of the hobby for a lot of different people, even if that's not really your focus. A lot of times you just enjoy collecting certain locomotives or whatever it might be. And so that can be an aspect of the hobby for some people. Some people really enjoy researching, actual real railroads or portions of railroads. Maybe they're trying to accurately recreate a scene. And so that can be a hobby that isn't just about model railroading. If you're trying to recreate an actual real physical thing, the recreation in miniature of actual or past things that existed can be a very rewarding hobby just because you have a lot of research involved. Maybe it's things that you're interested in and whatever it might be. But there can be a whole lot to that besides just the actual building of the models. A lot of people just enjoy the creation of miniature worlds in general. So you're building, not just place for the trains to run, but you're building actual environments with cities, with scenery, with everything else. And it's kind of almost like you're building a fantasy world in some cases, even if it might be trying to replicate a real place, because it's not going to be exactly the same in most cases. You have to make a lot of compromises. You might be just trying to build a representation of a real place, but sometimes for a lot of us, you're just trying to recreate a place that maybe could potentially exist, something that looks interesting. A lot of times, most of my builds that I do aren't based on anything in particular that's real. They kind of just have the flavor of things that I've seen, places I've been to. It might just be, I like how that road and the railroad tracks and the structures all sort of come together in that scene. I might try to recreate that in one of my models that I build. And you're not really going to try to recreate that scene, specifically, but it's just kind of the idea of how it looked. You're trying to create that kind of thing. Sometimes you're just trying to go full on creativity mode, where you're just trying to come up with something that looks interesting. You're basically making a three-dimensional piece of artwork, essentially. And if it involves model railroading, a lot of times you're creating a three-dimensional piece of animated artwork. And it might not be the case that you're really interested in the trains themselves so much, but just the fact that you want motion and movement in this piece of artwork that you're building. And having model trains is an easy way to do that because they're readily available. And so that can sometimes be one aspect of the hobby for some people as well. A lot of people are interested in model railroad operations, the actual movement of freight, passengers, that kind of thing around. And so they create an environment into which they can do that. And so that can be a rewarding and enjoyable experience in and of itself. And so it really just becomes a large-scale tabletop game that you've created by moving all these goods around in miniature and that kind of thing. And so that can be a very rewarding experience as well for a lot of people that get into the hobby. One thing that model railroading involves a lot of is building kits. So you have all kinds of structures to build. You might actually build freight cars from kits as well. There's all types of things that you're trying to build, little miniature cars, forklifts, trucks, whatever else. There's all these kits that you can build, maybe ships, whatever it might be, for your actual display. And so having all those things available to you to build can be a hobby in and of itself. A lot of people like just building kits, and that might be the biggest part of the hobby for them. And then the railroad is essentially a place to display all the kits that you've built. That can be a very enjoyable hobby in and of itself, is just building all of those kits. that you then assemble into a railroad to basically display them. Now, the hobby also involves a lot of different skills that people may enjoy. So a lot of people enjoy woodworking, and you can obviously do a lot of woodworking and model railroading. I've done a lot of projects, and I typically have a lot of woodworking involved in creating them. You don't necessarily need to be a good woodworker to do model railroading, and obviously you can do something very simple like go buy a 36-inch by 80-inch door from the home center, put some foam on it and tracks and buildings and whatever else, and you're done with it. But you can also spend a lot of time creating railroads that look like furniture. Basically you have very nice woodworking on the frames of the layout, your borders and everything just looks really nice, like a piece of furniture. And I enjoy trying to go a little bit more in that direction typically with the way I build things, just because I want them to look really nice from the exterior, and just feel like they could be put anywhere in the house and you're not going to have anybody complain about it because it looks really nice. And so if you enjoy woodworking, there's a lot you can do in the hobby with woodworking. Now, electronics has become a huge part of the hobby. There's all kinds of ways to incorporate electronics in the hobby. The actual running of the trains themselves involves a lot of electronics, computer control, even everything else. But you can obviously do all types of lighting effects, animate different things, whether it be crossing gates, whether it be lights turning on and off inside of structures, street lights, traffic lights, the actual train signals themselves, all these things you can create electronic circuitry to control and everything else, and wiring together all the controls and interfaces to computers and everything else. So you can do a lot with electronics today, and that can be its own hobby by itself too. So if you do enjoy working with electronics, you can really make that a focus of the hobby. You can also just hook up 2 wires to the track, run the trains, and be done with it. But certainly that is a whole path in the hobby that you can really embark on and do some really intricate, very exciting projects if you do have an interest in that electronic side of things. Now, whether it be kit building or building scenery or backdrops, painting can be a big part of the hobby as well. So a lot of people are very good painters, and they enjoy painting backdrops for the railroad. They enjoy painting the structures, all the kits they build, maybe even little miniature figures. And so if you enjoy painting kits, this is a hobby which you can do a lot of that. And so certainly that is one aspect of the hobby that can be enjoyable for a lot of people. Other people hate painting, and so to kind of maybe resort to some simple ways to make your structures and everything look better. You can buy pre-built, pre-painted structures if you don't want to have to paint them. And so there's ways you can kind of get around that if you don't like painting. You can buy pre-printed backdrops that have photorealistic scenery, that kind of thing. And so but if you do like painting, there's a lot of opportunity for painting in the hobby. And so really the bottom line is that if you're into the hobby of model railroading, you're really into a lot of other hobbies as well. And so I would like to hear what you guys enjoy about the hobby of model railroading, or what you think is the most enjoyable aspect for you, the most rewarding aspect of the hobby for you, what your main sub-hobby is in railroading, whether it be collecting trains, operations, model building, electronics, whatever it might be. Let me know down in the comments what you think are the most fun parts of the hobby for you. But anyway, again, this is a great hobby. If you're looking for a hobby to get into, it can be a very rewarding hobby long term. And certainly it's one that involves a lot of skills. So if you don't know them, don't worry about it. There's a lot of resources to learn those skills. And learning the skills is part of the hobby and part of the reason why I like this hobby, because I have learned a lot of woodworking, electronics, all those types of things I would never have learned otherwise because of this hobby. So certainly any hobby that makes you learn something is always a good hobby, I think, in terms of helping to better yourself long term and all of that. But anyway, that's all for now, and thanks for watching. Bye.